I'm Lynn Harder. I'm a professor in the School of Communications Studies at Ohio University, and I also co-direct the Barbara Gerald's Institute for Storytelling and Social Impact. Fundamentally, for me, I view narrative as a way that we make sense of the world. And specifically, as a rhetorical strategy, narratives are composed of characters in networks of relationships, right? But at the heart of a narrative is disruption, expectations gone awry. And so narratives allow us to engage in sense-making by plotting otherwise disconnected events. I'm interested particularly in the role of storytelling in health contexts, in how stories are inherently a part of provider-patient-family interactions, from diagnostic and clinical reasoning to how we make sense of a life that's been disrupted. I typically start out my classes and I talk to students about a paradox of safety and discomfort that I view as inherently a part of the classroom experience. I view my job as creating an environment, a safe environment that allows them to feel uncomfortable. Right? So service learning, where you're learning outside the bounds of a typical classroom, there's vulnerability in there, right? And you're challenging yourself to go beyond things that you've come to know is true. That demands that as a teacher, I have a capacity to be present with that.
Dr. Harder's use of narrative, I think, is really powerful, especially when we talk about health contexts. When you talk about people being vulnerable, there are a lot of different ideas and emotions that come up, and if you talk about them in stories, or if you read stories about them or write stories about them, you're able to encapsulate sort of the whole experience of illness and wellness.
Narrative sense-making has always been a part of healthcare, even if we haven't acknowledged it as such. I think that emergent technologies open up possibilities for how we share those stories, how those unfold. We now have things like online support groups, right, where individuals can enter into conversation with people across time and space who might share similar experiences but might not otherwise come into contact. Right? So there are emergent technologies that foster storytelling among people, just like online teaching and learning can foster different ways of telling stories. So I'm a really big advocate of academic service learning, where part of our job as educators is to assess their knowledge and assess their learning. We can do that in a lot of different ways.
Within her storytelling class, we were working to help her with a documentary in one of her 3 series of documentaries for PBS. So we were working hands-on with her, doing interviews, and it was a very interactive class. There was probably 15 of us working with her, and that was where I really got to know her on a personal level and professional level.
When they're able to take a cherished concept or idea that's at the heart of what you're learning about and really interrogate their experience anew, and they have a fresher and deeper insight about that experience because of the nature of what you're studying together. So that's fundamentally a narrative act. You're moving between the stories of a discipline, the conceptual stories, and the stories of people's lives. And I consider it a blessed privilege that I get to be at that intersection and that I get to facilitate that learning.
Storytelling is something she lives by. She doesn't just teach it. She doesn't just research it, but she actually lives it in her everyday life. And I think students are really drawn to that. They gravitate to that because she really puts into practice what she preaches, so to speak.